Welcome to part 2 of this Heart of the Matter special and our debate on whether or not the countdown to catastrophe in the Middle East and further afield can be stopped. In part 1 we considered the cause and effect relationship of Israel's policy and actions and the rise of anti-Semitism and the difference between anti-Semitism on the one hand and anti-Israelism or anti-Zionism on the other. We also considered the warning of Yehoshaphat Hakabi, a director of Israeli military intelligence, that what starts out as anti-Israelism could become anti-Semitism. Now I must introduce you my panel, and there is this old English tradition that it's ladies first. Carol Gould is an American who has lived and worked in the UK for many years. She's worked in television on both network dramas and documentaries. She's also an author. Her latest book is Don't Tread on Me, Anti-Americanism Abroad. I hope she won't think I'm treading on her if I reveal that her starting position was that she would not be seen alive or dead in the same room with another of our panelists. That she is here with him might be a sign of hope. Jonathan Hoffman is the Vice Chair of the Zionist Federation of the UK and Ireland, which was established in 1899 and played a significant role in securing the Balfour Declaration. The Federation says there are 120 organisations under its umbrella, and it claims over 50,000 affiliated members. Professor Ilan Pappy is Israel's leading revisionist historian. His books include The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. He is much in demand around the world for lectures and debates, all of which explains why he is at the very top of Zionism's official shit list, SHIT standing for Self-Hating Israeli Traitor. Dr. Hayo Meyer is a Nazi Holocaust survivor. He was born in Germany in 1924. At the age of 14, he fled on his own to the Netherlands to escape the Nazis. When they occupied the Netherlands, he served in the Jewish underground, was captured by the Gestapo and transported to Auschwitz. I know of nobody else who can speak with more authority on the subject of anti-Semitism than Hayo. His books include An Ethical Tradition Betrayed, The End of Judaism. Panel, welcome to you all. Thank you. Before we consider whether or not a real peace process is actually possible, I'd like to put a proposition to the panel, and I'm going to be putting it to Jonathan Hoffman first. The thing most needed to unlock the door to peace in the Middle East is an acknowledgement by Israelis and Jews everywhere that in the name of Zionism, a terrible wrong was done to the Palestinians, a wrong that must be righted. What, panel, has been the reason why to date most Israelis and most Jews can't say that? Jonathan.
Well, I think that's a complete fabrication. If you go back to 1948, read the books for Ephraim Karsh, for example, you will see that only a very tiny handful, maybe 300 or 400 Palestinians were directly left Palestine because of actions of the Israeli army. Most of them were told by their leaders to go. That was the case with the Palestinians in Haifa, for example. You know, I simply do not agree with that.
Fair enough. Carol?
My feeling is that for 8 years, Bill Clinton spent almost all of his time devoted, no president ever had devoted as much time to the Middle East peace process. For 8 years, sending Madeleine Albright and Warren Christopher to Syria and Jordan and Egypt and to Israel to try to make peace. The recalcitrant participants were always the Hamas. Every time an agreement was signed between Rabin and Arafat and King Hussein, a bomb went off. I don't see any hope with any administration until the Muslim world gets rid of radicalism, until Hamas stops putting the two sides against each other, Fatah and Hamas. And when you say that the Zionists and the Jews around the world have to admit this wrong, well, we've also got to get the Muslim world in order. And there are many Muslim commentators who agree that the corruption and the violence, look at Pakistan, look at Afghanistan, have got to be put to right as well.
But you see no prospects of Israelis and Jews around the world admitting that, yes, a wrong was done to the Palestinians? You see no prospect of that?
I don't see any point in it, because wrongs have been done to many people in the past 50 or 60 years. This isn't the only one. Look at what's happening in Zimbabwe. Look at Sudan. Look at what the Janjaweed have done.
With respect, I prefer us to stay on this subject.
Yes, but...
Yes. Thank you. I do agree that this is one of the major preconditions for any successful peace and reconciliation in Israel and Palestine. I don't think it's the only one. I think that acknowledging an Israeli acknowledgement of the crimes committed by Israel against the Palestinian people, not only in 1948, but after 1948, is precondition for peace, as such an admission by whites in South Africa was a precondition for ending apartheid. So I think that this is definitely. I don't think it would be enough. I think that apart from acknowledging the ethnic cleansing in 1948 and after 1948, Israel has to be accountable for that as well. And the only way of making Israel accountable, I think, is to allow the refugees to return to the places from where they were expelled in 1948 and after 1948. However, I think there is also agency for the Arab side and the Palestinian side. I think the Arab world, the Muslim world, would have to accept Israel and the Jewish community in Palestine as an integral and normal part of that reality. And I think if you put all the three, what I call the three A's together, acknowledgement, accountability, and acceptance, you have the moral framework on which to work on with the details, the nitty-gritty details of a political solution for the question. But I do think the first step is an acknowledgement. You ask me whether it could happen or not in the near future. I've devoted my life, and I'm still devoting my life, to persuade the Israelis to make that acknowledgement. It's better than it was 20, 30 years ago. I'm hopeful. I think Israelis will eventually understand what was done in their name, and maybe it will start in the Jewish communities around the world. When Jews around the world, which would be easier for them than for Israelis, would understand what was done in their name, would prod the Israelis to go on in that avenue, I think we have a chance for peace and reconciliation.
Would you like to add a bit to that?
Yes, certainly. I first want to point out that one of the people who, together with me, was one of the first to start the movement, A Different Jewish Voice in the Netherlands, was Dr. Theo de Graaf. He was for 7 years the main psychiatrist of the Israeli army. And I'll never forget, we were on the first meeting of our club from which the European Jews for Just Peace was erected. But we were on the first meeting, we both gave talks, and he said there and then, it is absolutely inconceivable that ever peace comes if we do not start, and mind you, he was the former chief psychiatrist of the Israeli army, if we do not start with acknowledging what we have done. And then one more, why don't the Jews do it? In my first book, which you announced, The End of Judaism, I gave a psychiatric theory about why the Jews in the world, nearly all, are paranoid. They are paranoid due to two things. First of all, obviously, due to the Holocaust, but secondly, due to the tradition of always memorizing what harm the Jews have undergone in history. So they memorize 1648 when Khmelnytsky massacred Jews in the Ukraine. And there's a German Jewish psychiatrist in Holland. He's still living, he's in the 90s, and he is, at the time after the war, when some people came back, made the theory of sequential traumatization. And so if you have just thought about Khmelnytsky, and then a week later a far family member is massacred in a murder, then that is extra traumatizing, and that's why so many Jews in the world are paranoid, and they can never